Shalom, this is Daniel from Netivyah coming at you from Jerusalem, and today we're going to talk about a whole bunch of interesting economic stuff, but first a quick update, just so you all know, the ceasefire between Iran and the United States, the 2-week ceasefire ended and has been extended by President Trump for a few more days. He didn't specify exactly when. Then he said it would be until Sunday. Then it was said by the Caroline Levitt, that it is not until Sunday, so we'll see how it goes. Although the Iranian side says that as long as the Straits of Hormuz are blockaded by the United States illegally, blah, 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 ignoring the fact that they did the same thing, that they see it as an act of war and worse than bombing and so on and so forth, which in fact I agree with, because financially they're losing $500 million a day, which means they will not have money to pay salaries to their army. So we'll see how that develops, let alone rebuild their infrastructure. But anyways, moving on. We are standing at the threshold where the maps we've used since the end of the Second World War are no longer functional. For nearly a century, the geopolitical logic in the Middle East was anchored by the necessity of the Suez Canal and the role of the United States as the sole guarantor of maritime security. But in 2026, things are changing. We are witnessing a corridor war that is far more than a race for logistical efficiency. It is the physical construction of a new world order where geography dictates nations' loyalty. And the Middle East is the bridge between the competing ambitions of the West and the East. To understand the magnitude of this shift, we must look at the state of the world today. The spring of 2026 has been defined by the most significant military escalation in decades. The coordinated strikes by the United States and Israel against Iran result in the deaths of the supreme leader and the decapitation of the Revolutionary Guard's command structure did not just trigger a war. It triggered a total collapse of the old energy corridors. With the Straits of Hormuz effectively closed to commercial traffic and maritime insurance for the Persian Gulf skyrocketing, the world has been forced to find land-based alternatives at a pace that was previously unthinkable. This isn't just about moving containers. It's about national survival in an age where maritime choke points have become killing zones. In this context, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, which we have spoken about in the past, has transformed from a visionary project into a desperate lifeline. While the conflict in the Levant initially slowed its progress, the reality is that the land bridge through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, to the port of Haifa is no longer a concept. It is the only way goods are reaching Europe from the east without braving the treacherous waters of the Red Sea or the long detour around the Cape of Good Hope. By routing trade through Haifa, the IMEC makes Arab-Israeli normalization a functional necessity. It builds a physical peace that is more durable than any treaty because it turns the stability of the Levant into a requirement for the prosperity of New Delhi, Riyadh, and Berlin. This effectively creates an Indo-Abramic bloc designed to contain Chinese influence while bypassing the vulnerabilities of the traditional sea lanes. However, every action in this area triggers an equal and opposite reaction. China, despite the blows to its partners in Tehran and Caracas, is playing a sophisticated long game. In January, the United States executed a high-stakes operation in Venezuela that saw the removal of the Maduro regime and the redirection of its massive oil reserves towards Western markets. While this was a blow to Beijing's energy security, China has pivoted. Rather than fighting for old world oil, China is doubling down on its control of the Greenland of the future, the critical minerals and rare earth elements essential for the energy transition. China's dominant position in the rare earth processing gives it a mineral veto over the Western defense industry, including the production of the very F-35 used in the strikes against Iran. Even as the U.S. lobbies to prevent Chinese buyers from acquiring massive deposits in Greenland and the Arctic, Beijing is busy industrializing the Suez Canal economic zone. China is not trying to beat IMEC by building a parallel rail. They are trying to own the ports at both ends. By controlling the logistic hubs in Abu Dhabi's Khalifa port and Egypt's Suez, China ensures that even if the water is closed, the infrastructure remains Chinese. They are betting that the West's Indo-Abramic corridor will still have to plug into the global system that China has already wired. And this brings us to the development road, the Iraq to Turkey dry canal. This has become the most credible rival to Western-led corridors. With the Grand Fa port in southern Iraq now partially operational, and the quadrilateral agreement signed between Iraq, Turkey, Qatar, and the UAE, this route offers a direct land link to Europe that bypasses both Israel and Suez. For Turkey, this is the ultimate prize. It restores Ankara as the indispensable gatekeeper between East and West. Turkey reopened a strategic 350-kilometer railway corridor along the Syrian border, signaling a return to the historic logic of the Hejaz railway that ran in that area. The trilateral memorandum signed between Turkey, Syria, and Jordan this month isn't just about fixing those old tracks, it's about the Levant restoration. It's an attempt to reintegrate Syria into the regional economy and create a north-south corridor that links the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, independent of Western or Chinese control. The geopolitical realignment we are seeing is three distinct strategic routes. First, the Western axis, led by the US and India, which uses IMEC to tie the democratic global south to Europe and Israel. Second, the Euro-Asian axis, led by a resilient China and to a degree also Russia, which focuses on the middle corridor through Central Asia and the north-south transport corridor through Iran to bypass US-controlled seas. And third, the regional axis, led by Turkey and the Gulf monarchies, who are building their own corridors, like the Development Road, to ensure that they are never again mere pawns in the great power struggle. The Iran war adds a layer of extreme volatility to these plans. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has removed 20% of the global liquefied natural gas and 20 millions of barrels of oil per day from the market. In March, US facilities reached peak capacity to keep Europe from freezing. While the redirection of Venezuelan oil has provided a temporary buffer, this reliance on American energy comes with a political price. The Gulf states, seeing the vulnerability of maritime trade, are racing to compete land-based pipelines and rail links. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are playing a masterful double game. They are funding IMEC to maintain their security umbrella with Washington, while simultaneously investing in the Iraq-Turkey route to keep their options open with Beijing. Furthermore, the scramble for Greenland and Arctic materials represents the new great game. As the ice melts and new passages open, the control of the Northwest Passage becomes as important as the Suez Canal once was. The Trump administration's aggressive rhetoric regarding Greenland's resources has created a rift with European partners who fear a new era of American resource imperialism. China is waiting in the wings, offering Greenland and other mineral-rich nations processing offtake agreements that are harder to refuse than a military alliance. The world is realizing that while oil was the currency of the 20th century, the 21st century will be won by whoever controls the high-speed data cables and the mineral-rich soil of the North. We are moving away from globalization, the idea of a single world where trade flows freely everywhere, into a period of regional fragmentation. This is a world of fortress corridors. In this new map, Egypt's influence is declining as the Suez is no longer the only game in town. Israel is becoming a vital data and energy plug for Europe. Turkey is trying to become the gatekeeper of the Euro-Asian landmass. And India is emerging as the primary engine for Middle Eastern trade, replacing China as the region's most important partner. The politics of the world are no longer about ideology or democratic values. They are about land bridges, the high-speed rail, and the hydrogen pipeline. These corridors are the physical architecture of the multipolar world. They are designed to survive a war with Iran, a trade war with China, and the total disruption of maritime commerce. As these corridors are completed, they will dictate which nations prosper and which ones are left behind in the dead zones of the old map. The Middle East is no longer just a gas station. It is the central switchboard of a world that is being rewired in real time. The question for the powers involved is no longer about owning the resources, but about owning the paths they take and the technology that moves them. This is the new geography of power, and it is being written in steel and fiber optic cable across the sands of Arabia and the mountains of the Levant. Join us next time as we look into more interesting geopolitical topics in the region, and hopefully we'll see some more developments regarding Iran and curtailing their expansion and terror exportation in the world. Shalom, and God bless you all.